Hi, my name is Heather Lewis, and I am a recovering addict. I have been clean for 13 years. I started using drugs when I was a teenager. I had some really hideous things that happened to me growing up. I suffered a lot of emotional, physical, sexual abuse. And as a result, I just had a really hard time with feelings. I didn't ever feel comfortable. I didn't ever feel like I fit in. I would always pretend like I fit in with anybody. Like when I was in high school, I would be the chameleon. So I could fit in with, the stoners. I could fit in with the jocks. I could fit in with the theater crew. I would just change myself to fit in with anybody who was around, but I never really felt like I belonged. So when I was 14 years old, I was sexually assaulted by a family member, and that was a really hideous experience. And it took me a lot of years to be able to own that and say how hideous it was, because I just believed that I should be able to get over it. That's what I was told by my family, was that I should just forget that it ever happened, just ignore it, that it would go away. But the pain and the shame and everything that I felt associated with that, it never went away. And so I used to cover all of that up, to mask all of those feelings. Then when I was a junior in high school, I had a boyfriend and I got pregnant. And my senior year of high school, I gave birth and I placed my baby up for adoption. And looking back on that now, it's beautiful and wonderful, and she has a great life, and she wouldn't have had a great life if those choices weren't made. But at the time, there was a lot of pain associated with that, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, a lot of wondering. So I used to mask all of that. And that continued on for a lot of years, and I had jobs and hung out with people where it was socially, acceptable. I was a functioning addict, so, I would drink in excess, or I would smoke weed, but it was never any big deal. I could always have a job, I always had money, place to live, all of those things. Until I was in a long-term relationship that ended. And it ended badly. And so in order to mask those feelings, I got into harder drugs. And with the harder drugs and the more expenses, the consequences were greater. And I was no longer able to keep up with that and be a functioning addict. So it only took about 1 year. Once I started the behavior, before I kind of hit my bottom. And not eating for days, staying up for days, led me to a point that I was just, a shell of a human. And I remember distinctly one day it was just really bad, and I was at my friend's house, who wasn't an addict, but I ended up there after several days of using, and I didn't know what to do anymore. And so I asked her if she would call my parents. And I just kind of let them know that, this is what was going on. I come from a family of alcoholics, and I also have codependent family members. So the combination of the two, no one was really willing to face the reality for a long time. Nobody was going to call me out or set up an intervention or anything like that. So I, had to hit my bottom and come to them. And so within a couple of days, I had looked online and I went to my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And there I found people who were like me, and when they spoke, they said things that I said, and they felt the way that I felt, and they used drugs for all the same reason that I used drugs. And so I found a place where I really felt like I belonged. And so I've been an active member of that program, and I still am an active member. And there is a significant therapeutic value of one addict helping another. It's where I go with my problems. It's a safe place for me. I don't ever feel any kind of judgment, and it restored my belief and my relationship, with God. Ultimately, the program encourages us to have a relationship with a God of our own understanding, and so what that encouraged me to do was to improve and build my relationship with God, and through the 12 steps, and trusting and believing that all of the things that I had suffered, all of the guilt, all of the shame that I was carrying could be undone, and believing that I could be restored to some level of sanity, allowed for me to have that relationship and work some steps to kind of undo all of the damage that had happened from not only my drug use, but then also to look at those situations that made me hate who I was. Definitely by the time I got clean, there was a very high level of self-loathing, and I was carrying around a lot of baggage. And so, it has taken a lot of step work and a lot of self-realization and prayer to kind of figure out why things, happened, or come to terms with what happened, and, accept that and move on. And I can't say that it ever fully goes away. I always have to be vigilant about my health and making sure that I'm addressing situations as they arise, because my thinking is still there. My addict brain is still there. And so on any given day, if I make the choice to do something different, or if I look in the other direction, my life can spiral downhill in just a matter of moments. And so, I continue to participate in 12-step recovery meetings, and I have a lot of friends, that support me and that know my story. And then I also, look to my relationship with God to help me get through, these things. And it's a constant process. But I have a great therapist, and that has certainly helped. Just about a year and a half ago, I was just really struggling at home, and my responses to my children acting out were just like so over the top. The level of rage that I was feeling was just unreasonable, really. And my responses to them were not okay. And so my husband had to have a conversation with me and essentially call me out on that. And so what I had to do was look at, have I really looked at those situations, that abuse, that assault that happened to me, and really allowed myself to heal from that. And so I worked for a long time with my therapist to look at those situations and to recover from them, because what was happening was that was all still on my heart, that was all still in my spirit. And so when my kids would do something that would make me feel unloved or lied to, or any of those things, I would connect it to that baggage that I was carrying, from my childhood, and it would just snowball. And so my response would just be just outlandish, and certainly not, the response that should happen when, your kid does something wrong. So it's a constant process for me. I'm extremely grateful for, the people that I know who helped me walk through all of this. So that's really all I have.